When James Harrington, a formidable corporate titan, encounters twin sisters hawking a necklace to fund their mother's medical care, his meticulously ordered existence begins to fracture. The necklace evokes a haunting memory of a devastating loss, but he never anticipated that aiding them would transform his life irrevocably. Will he embrace the possibility of a newfound family, or will the weight of his past sorrows anchor him in place? What choice do you think James will make? The crisp autumn breeze swept through New York City's vibrant streets, scattering crimson and amber leaves in a lively dance. At 42, James Harrington cut an imposing figure, his tailored suit accentuating his lean, commanding stature. As the head of Harrington Global, he had forged a vast empire spanning continents. Triumph came naturally, yet it left a void within him, as though all his riches and recognition couldn't fill the emptiness gnawing at his soul. He moved with intent, but the city's frenetic rhythm, blaring horns, bustling crowds, felt inconsequential. His life was a symphony of precision, tightly controlled, devoid of anything that sparked true vitality. Amid this haze of detachment, a faint voice broke through. "Excuse me, sir, would you buy our necklace?" James nearly strode past, brushing it off as another street peddler's pitch. But the voice, raw with desperation yet achingly sincere, halted him. He turned to see two identical girls, no older than 10, their chestnut hair fluttering in the wind, their jade-green eyes brimming with worry. One held a delicate silver necklace, its heart-shaped pendant glinting faintly. "It's very special," the girl murmured, her voice quivering with hope and dread. "We're selling it for our mom." Those words struck James like a thunderbolt. The necklace, with its ornate filigree and tiny engraved words, sent a shiver through him. It was uncannily familiar. For a fleeting moment, he was transported 5 years back to the day he gifted a nearly identical necklace to his wife, Sarah, for their anniversary. A day filled with love and laughter, oblivious to the tragedy looming. The necklace he thought was lost forever, buried with her after the accident that claimed her and their twin daughters. How much? The question slipped out before he could stop himself, his eyes fixed on the necklace as he reached for his wallet. The twins shared a nervous glance, their faces etched with quiet desperation. "Whatever you can give," the girl with the necklace said softly, her voice barely audible. Without fully grasping why, James pulled out several bills, far more than they'd expected. As he handed over the money, the girl's eyes widened in disbelief, but she didn't hesitate. Lily, the twin holding the necklace, gently placed it in James's hand, her small fingers brushing his briefly before pulling back. "Thank you, sir," Grace said, her voice trembling with gratitude. "This will help our mom so much." A pang of unease hit James as he pocketed the necklace. His mind raced, yet the emotions swirling within him defied explanation. He watched the girls clutch the money tightly, their figures darting away with urgency. But as he stood there, something rooted him to the spot. This couldn't be the end. He turned to his driver, waiting nearby, and gave a command that startled even himself. "Follow them," he said quietly, his voice steadier than he felt. "I need to know where they're going." As the car trailed the girls through New York's winding streets, James gripped the silver necklace tightly. It had been years since anything pierced his carefully constructed world, and he couldn't shake the sense that this was no mere chance encounter. The twins led him to a dilapidated apartment building in Brooklyn, a world apart from his polished life. The contrast between his sleek car and the crumbling surroundings was stark. His mind churned as he watched the girls vanish inside. "Stay here," he told his driver, stepping out, driven by an inexplicable urge to follow this strange path. He climbed 4 flights of creaking stairs, guided by the faint sound of children's voices, until he reached a door with peeling paint. He hesitated, then knocked. When the door opened, one of the twins gasped, her eyes wide. "It's the man from the street," she called, glancing back. Her sister, equally bewildered, appeared behind her. Beyond them, James glimpsed a sparse apartment and, on a thin mattress, the frail form of a woman, motionless. "May I come in?" James asked, his usual commanding tone softening. After a brief pause, the twin stepped aside. The apartment was bare but tidy, devoid of warmth or personal touches, just the essentials. "Mom's sleeping," one twin whispered, her voice barely audible. James's breath caught as he studied the woman on the mattress. Her pale, drawn face bore an eerie resemblance to Sarah's. A wave of shock hit him, but he steadied himself. "How long has she been like this?" he asked, kneeling closer. "Weeks," Grace replied faintly. "She's getting worse every day." Without thinking, James touched the woman's feverish skin, a surge of emotion nearly overwhelming him. "She needs a hospital," he said firmly. "We don't have money," Lily whispered, her voice heavy with defeat. James glanced at the silver pendant in his palm, then back at the twins' desperate faces. Something within him shifted. "I'll handle it," he said, his voice resolute. Do you think the twins remind James of his lost daughters? How might this connection shape his future actions? Share your thoughts in the comments. James sat motionless in the back seat of his polished black car, the silver necklace pressed between his fingers. He had just made a choice unlike any in his life. He'd always been a man of structure, of control, and now he found himself in a crumbling Brooklyn apartment, contemplating a reality far removed from his curated existence. The car glided through New York streets, bridging the gap between the decaying building and the nearest hospital. His thoughts kept circling back to the twins, Lily and Grace. The fear in their eyes haunted him. So young, so innocent, yet weighed down by burdens no child should bear. And their mother, Rachel, her ashen face and shallow breaths so reminiscent of Sarah, the wife he'd lost 5 years ago. As the car pulled into Mount Sinai Hospital's emergency entrance, James felt the unfamiliar sting of being out of his depth. He thrived in boardrooms, sealing multi-million-dollar deals, orchestrating every detail of his life. But now, he was carrying a woman he barely knew, his hands trembling as he supported her fragile frame. Lily and Grace followed, their anxious faces mirroring their mother's delicate state. The hospital staff moved swiftly, ushering them inside as James directed the nurses to take Rachel to emergency care. He trailed them through sterile hallways, his heart pounding. What was he doing? This wasn't his world. He wasn't a man who meddled in personal affairs, especially not with strangers. Yet here he was. The twins hovered near him, their hands clasped tightly. Grace looked up, her eyes wide with fear. "Will she be okay?" she asked, her voice a whisper. James met her gaze, searching for words of comfort he couldn't fully believe. "We're doing all we can," he said, though he wasn't certain it was true. He wasn't a doctor. He didn't know what would happen next, but he couldn't abandon these girls. Not now. Time dragged as doctors and nurses worked around Rachel, hooking her to IVs and monitors. James felt the gravity of his decision to bring them here. He'd vowed after Sarah's death to shield himself from such pain, to never grow too attached, to avoid the turmoil of love and loss. But Lily and Grace had breached those defenses with a single glance. When the doctor emerged, James's stomach knotted. Rachel's condition was dire, the doctor explained, severe dehydration, likely kidney failure. "We're starting dialysis immediately, but she needs constant care. She's not out of the woods yet." Silence settled as the words sank in. James stared at the door, his mind racing. Paying a hospital bill was one thing, but this was a commitment. What now? How far would he go for this family, for Rachel? Hours later, after Rachel stabilized, James sat with the twins in a small hospital waiting room. Their faces were etched with worry, but also a flicker of relief. Lily gripped her sister's hand, her knuckles pale. "Will Mom be okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. James lacked answers, but something stirred within him. He wasn't a father, not anymore, not for 5 years. Yet, looking at Lily and Grace, he felt a long-dormant urge to protect, to do more than just pay a bill. "She's getting the best care," he said softly, his voice calmer than he expected. "She'll pull through." Grace studied him, her expression a mix of gratitude and curiosity. "Why are you helping us so much?" she asked quietly. "We're just strangers." James took a deep breath, grappling for an answer. "Sometimes people need help," he said slowly. "And sometimes you help because it feels right." The doctor assured them Rachel would soon move to a recovery room, but the question of what came next lingered. James couldn't bear the thought of sending the girls back to that crumbling apartment. Not after this. They deserved better, more than he'd ever offered anyone. But how could he open his life to them without unraveling the walls he'd built over 5 years, shielding himself from such raw emotion? For the first time in years, he felt drawn to something real. As the night deepened, the hospital's quiet hum filling the room, James made a decision that would reshape his life. "We can't leave you here alone," he said, more to himself than the twins. "You'll stay with me until your mom's better." The twins exchanged a stunned glance, their eyes wide. Lily opened her mouth, but no words came. "You mean it?" Grace whispered, almost afraid to hope. "Yes," James said firmly. "I mean it." What do you think James is truly feeling? Is he acting out of guilt, or is this the start of something deeper? How will his actions reshape his life and the lives of Lily and Grace? Share your thoughts in the comments. It had been a week since James Harrington welcomed Lily and Grace into his home, and everything had shifted. His once silent Hamptons mansion now echoed with laughter, the patter of small feet, and the chatter of children exploring rooms untouched for years. It was unfamiliar, yet oddly comforting. James couldn't quite explain it. He'd gone from a tech magnate, a man of order and control, to someone who cared for people he barely knew, feeling something he hadn't in years: hope. It wasn't seamless. There were moments of quiet reflection in his study, pondering the choice that brought Lily and Grace into his life. He'd never been one to let others close. But the twins were unstoppable, reminding him of his lost daughters, Emma and Olivia. The more he saw of Lily and Grace, the more his grief began to mend, however slowly. The days brimmed with new moments for all of them. Rachel, though still frail, was improving steadily. James spent more time with the twins, teaching them things he'd once shared with his daughters: chess, a game they'd loved, or stargazing through his telescope, pointing out constellations they'd never seen. The twins were captivated, their faces glowing with wonder at each discovery. But doubts crept in. When Rachel grew strong enough to sit up, she'd catch James watching her, a faint unease in his gaze. They hadn't discussed what came next. Rachel assumed that once she recovered, she and the twins would leave. It was too much, after all, living in someone else's home, depending on them entirely. But James hadn't broached the subject. One evening, after the twins were asleep, Rachel found him by a window, gazing at the estate's sprawling grounds. The room was still, save for the rustle of wind through the trees. She approached, her steps soft but deliberate. "James," she said, breaking the quiet. "We need to talk." He turned, his face unreadable. He'd known this moment was coming, but it didn't ease the weight. "We do," he agreed, his voice low. The air crackled with unspoken tension, both aware their lives had changed forever. Rachel hesitated, then spoke. "You've done so much for us," she said, her voice warm with gratitude and something deeper. "But we can't stay here forever. I need to find work. The girls need stability. We can't live in your world forever, James." James's jaw tightened. The thought of them leaving stung in a way he hadn't anticipated. He'd always valued his independence, needing no one. Yet here, in his own home, he felt needed. The idea of Rachel and the twins leaving filled him with a fear he hadn't known in years. "You're right," he said softly, his eyes dropping to the floor. "But what if I asked you to stay?" The words escaped before he could stop them, hanging in the air like a fragile vow. Rachel's eyes narrowed in surprise. "Stay," she echoed. "Why would you want that?" James's heart raced. He hadn't expected to feel so exposed, so uncertain. But with them, everything was different. "I don't know," he admitted, stepping closer. I don't want you to leave. This house, this place, it's felt empty for so long. Now it feels different. It feels like home." Rachel searched his face for doubt, but found only raw sincerity. For the first time, she wondered if James was right. Could they stay in this grand, lonely house? Could they forge a new life together? "I never pictured this for us," Rachel said softly. "But maybe it's what we need too." James gently took her hand. "I don't want to live in the past anymore," he said, his voice steady. "I've spent too long running from it. Maybe it's time we let it go." Before Rachel could reply, the living room door swung open, and Lily and Grace burst in, beaming with excitement. "Mom, James," Lily called. "Can we go to the park tomorrow? There's a new playground, and we want to see it." James chuckled, his heart lighter than it had been in years. "We'll go," he said, his smile genuine. "And maybe after, we'll make a family day of it. All of us." The words felt foreign, but, for the first time in years, they felt right. Rachel squeezed his hand, and he knew that whatever lay ahead, they'd face it together. What do you think lies ahead for James, Rachel, Lily, and Grace? Will they build a new life together, or will the past keep pulling them back? How do you feel about James's choice to keep them in his life for good? Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and if you love this story, comment 100 to show your support. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to share this video with your friends.